Subcommittee on Homeland Security, Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Law Enforcement, and Intelligence will come to order. Without objection, the subcommittee may recess at any point. The purpose of this hearing today is to evaluate the unprecedented uptick in organized retail crime in the United States and to hear testimony from key witnesses from federal government and private industry. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Good afternoon. We welcome you to today's important hearing on organized retail crime and threats to our public safety. The topic of today's hearing is the issue of organized retail crime, which has been rising throughout the country, demonstrating a threat to tens of thousands of retailers of all sizes and subjecting employees and customers to real harm. As many Americans flock to stores to complete their holiday shopping this Christmas season, large organizations of professional shoplifters or boosters are exploiting soft-on-crime policies to ransack American businesses and carry out an unprecedented spike in retail crime. Generally, organized retail crime involves the association of two or more persons engaged in illegally obtaining merchandise of value from retail establishments through theft and/or fraud as part of a criminal enterprise. This is not the same thing as shoplifting or petty theft, both of which obviously are illegal. This type of organized activity involves multiple occurrences and may transpire across various stores and state jurisdictions, further complicating matters for which law enforcement agencies to combat these crimes. We also have reports that transnational criminal organizations, or TCOs, that are taking advantage of our open borders are also engaging in retail theft. It's important to note that these criminals do not show any bias when selecting targets, and this crime occurs across a wide spectrum, from big cities to small towns in both urban and also rural areas. It has been said that organized retail crime is overblown. That's false. We cannot remain oblivious to the surge in organized retail crime throughout the country, impacting every one of our districts. As many of us have seen, retailers are not overhyping the threats or challenges posed by the criminal activity. They are taking steps to ensure the safety of their staff, customers, and products. This includes measures like placing common items like detergent and baby formula behind anti-theft plexiglass and utilizing smart shopping carts equipped with automatically locking wheels to prevent thieves from exiting the stores with the cart without paying. In Washington, D.C., where the Progressive City Council has implemented soft-on-crime legislation that has emboldened criminals to run rampant through the district, one CVS has resorted to displaying tissue paper and rolls of toilet paper as photographs, not the actual product, but as photographs to prevent theft. In situations like this, we must look at the immediate impact on families and consumers. This right here directly drives away a mother looking to buy diapers and formula at her neighborhood store, or a family looking to quickly grab over-the-counter medicine for their loved ones. These chaotic, calculated robberies not only pose a risk to employees, customers, and store owners, but there is a multifaceted domino effect on our communities, as well as the workload that occurs on law enforcement. The National Retail Federation, which will be participating in the second panel today, surveyed over 230 retail asset protection professionals and found that 90% indicated that organized retail crime is more of a risk to retail businesses now than it was just 3 years ago. Businesses of all size in all locations, from big box stores like Home Depot, Macy's, Gap, Walmart, Target, CVS, Walgreens, and many others, to mom and pop shops like Eggemeyer's General Store in my hometown of San Angelo, Texas, are all worried about these alarming trends and are sounding the alarm on the rise of criminal activity tied to them. In addition to widespread theft, some of these cases have turned deadly. Just last week, a security guard at a Macy's in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, was fatally stabbed by a man attempting to steal merchandise. A second security guard was also injured. According to reports, the suspect, who was later arrested, has a history of retail theft, of robbery, and drug offenses across the Philadelphia region. Moreover, at this Macy's location alone, they filed over 250 reports of retail theft in a year. Then, last year at a Home Depot in Hillsborough, North Carolina, an elderly employee of Home Depot, Gary Razor, was assaulted by a man attempting to steal power washers. According to reports, Mr. Razor, who was 82 years old, was violently shoved during the attempted theft and later died of his injuries. Sadly, these incidents are not isolated, and similar tragedies have occurred across the country. notwithstanding that violence tied to organized retail crime has resulted in damage to storefronts and other property, as we've seen on the news in many locations. Organized retail crime is also responsible for financial losses to retailers. As a result, they have begun closing stores in certain locations, which also creates a negative impact on those communities that they serve and kills jobs for thousands of Americans. According to a report by the Retail Industry Leaders Association on the impact of organized retail crime, nearly $70 billion worth of goods was stolen from American retailers in 2019. On a micro level, Walmart has stated that it loses nearly $3 billion per year in U.S. revenue due to theft. The severity of large-scale theft and other factors has led Walmart to close several stores and has a raising of prices effect nationwide. Reports also indicated that Walmart plans to open a police workspace within one of its Atlanta stores, a recent drastic measure aimed at mitigating criminal activities. Target recently announced it would be closing 9 stores across 4 cities, New York, Seattle, San Francisco, and Portland, due to concerns about employee and customer safety from violence tied to organized retail crime. Part of the challenge in addressing organized retail crime includes the high felony theft threshold and bail reform laws that have emboldened criminals to participate in organized retail crime. Criminals often pilfer items below the threshold for felony charges, recognizing that such offenses are typically not subject to prosecution in certain jurisdictions. Criminals also know that they will be released under certain weak bail reform laws. Upon release, these criminals proceed to engage in similar or more severe criminal activities without encountering any consequences. I look forward to hearing from San Diego County District Attorney Summer Stephan, who will also be the next president of the National District Attorneys Association, on the important role that prosecutors play in the safety of our communities, including addressing the challenge of organized retail crime. And I also look forward to this hearing as an opportunity for bipartisanship, for us to come together and hopefully agree that we do have a real issue here, and if so, what can we be doing at this level? This surge in retail theft is more than just teenagers looking for a thrill, but it's an abuse of soft-on-crime policies and evidence of a deeper-rooted issue driving crime and fear amongst our communities. We have a distinguished panel of witnesses testifying today, including a federal panel of witnesses to examine efforts to combat the rising trend of organized retail crime. We will also hear from a second panel of witnesses from industry and state government about their perspective on this serious challenge. I'd like to thank all the witnesses with us this afternoon, and I look forward to the discussion. I now recognize the ranking member and my friend, the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Magaziner, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Pfluger, for working with us to call this hearing on the issue of organized retail crime. Many of us have heard from retailers concerned by organized retail crime, and so today's hearing is for us to explore the scope of the problem and determine best how to respond. Crime overall continues to be at historically low levels and has fallen even more in recent years. According to the FBI, between 1993 and 2022, the violent crime rate across the United States has fallen by more than half, with homicides falling 35%, robberies falling 76%, and burglaries falling 78%. And the trend continues to this day. The FBI reports that violent crime decreased a further 2% in 2022 compared to the previous year. However, we must always strive to do better to ensure that all Americans are safe in their homes, their schools, and their neighborhoods. And we have heard reports of organized retail crime becoming more prevalent, which leads us to today's hearing. We all need to understand the nature of organized retail crime and the best practices for ending it. I want to be clear what we are talking about here. We are not talking about ordinary shoplifting committed by individuals working alone. We are talking about large, organized groups who engage in systematic theft of retail goods and the subsequent resale of stolen goods for financial gain. Organized retail crime does not just impact large retailers, it also affects mom and pop shops and especially retail employees. And beyond the important concerns about safety, these crimes also raise costs for American consumers. Every time a store is robbed of products, has to hire more security, replace broken windows, or install new security systems, some of those costs are inevitably going to be passed on to shoppers. It is important that we get to the root of the problem of organized retail crime to keep people safe and lower costs for everyone across the country. This bipartisan hearing is a chance for us to hear from both industry leaders in retail and from federal law enforcement agencies about their efforts to combat organized retail crime. I want to thank our panelists for joining today and look forward to your remarks. And without any objection, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to yield the final 2 minutes of my opening statement to the gentlelady from Nevada, Ms. Titus, who has been a leader in Congress on this issue.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Magaziner, for yielding and for holding this important hearing. I have been deeply involved in this for several Congresses as one of the most talked about issues in my office, from business, from law enforcement, and from stakeholders. I witnessed this myself, as far as from me to you, and a Walgreens in my district, and we held a roundtable with some representatives from law enforcement and business, including Home Depot. I agree with all that's been said before, because we know that consumers and employees worry about their own safety. They worry about convenience when shopping, and they just worry that they're going to get caught up in one of these schemes or operations while they're out there during this holiday season. In addition, this retail crime that's organized has considerable monetary effects on the business and on our communities. In Nevada, the Organized Retail Crime Association estimates that in 2021, retail product theft cost our state's economy about $82 million. And no community is immune. You heard from the suburbs to the inner city, from big business to small business. It's particularly troublesome in a real urbanized commercial area like my district in downtown Las Vegas. And retailers have a strong presence there. They make a large contribution to our local economy, and they are targeted. The bill that I've introduced, combating organized retail crime, is bipartisan. There are 47 Republicans, 47 Democrats, and every Democrat on this subcommittee is a co-sponsor, and I'm very proud of that, and I want to thank them for their support. I know this hearing will help highlight some of the increased trends in high-level organized retail crime, and it will underscore the need for federal action to allow DHS and investigators and prosecutors to have the tools they need to go after this organized crime, and also the associations, organizations, and activities that are tied to it behind the scenes that many people don't even realize. So thank you again. Thank you for the time, and I look forward to hearing our expert witnesses.
And I yield back. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ranking Member. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. I'm pleased to have two distinguished panels of witnesses before us today on this very important topic. I ask that our first panel please rise and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before the Committee on Homeland Security of the United States House of Representatives will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. You may be seated. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. I'd now like to formally introduce our first panel. Mr. Michael Kroll currently serves as a Homeland Security Investigation Special Agent in charge with the New England Field Office in Boston, Massachusetts. Mr. Jason Kane currently serves as a Special Agent in charge of the U.S. Secret Service's Nashville District. And finally, Mr. Jose Perez serves as the Deputy Assistant Director of the Transnational Organized Crime, Violent Crime, and Operational Support Sections of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your service to this nation. I'd now like to recognize each of the witnesses. I know you have written statements, and we appreciate those. If you can summarize that and keep it to 5 minutes. Mr. Kroll, you are now recognized.
Chairman Pfluger, Ranking Member Magaziner, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to discuss Homeland Security Investigation's global efforts to combat organized retail crime and organized theft groups. As the largest investigative agency within the Department of Homeland Security, HSI has unique authorities and an expansive investigative mandate focused on securing the homeland from transnational crime and threats which impact our national, border, and economic security. Our 6,800 special agents are stationed in 253 domestic field offices and in 93 international offices, while being supplemented by nearly 4,000 state, local, federal, and tribal task force officers, including 14 specialized and vetted host country transnational criminal investigative units, or TCIUs. HSI's operational priorities serve as the foundation of our strategic focus: combating financial crime, investigating cybercrime, preventing crimes of exploitation and victimization, ensuring public safety, upholding fairness in global trade, and protecting national security. The unlawful activity associated with organized retail crime intertwines with many of these aforementioned priorities and therefore represents an area of our investigative focus. In 2022, retail theft was responsible for approximately $72 billion in losses, according to the National Retail Federation. In response to this, HSI initiated Operation Boiling Point 2.0 to effectively communicate the severity of organized theft groups involved in retail crime, cargo theft, and other systemic thefts. Operation Boiling Point 2.0 is a multi-tiered strategy focused on: 1, integration of efforts using enhanced public and private sector partnerships; 2, creating efficiencies of scale and data collection and investigative lead dissemination; 3, using this information to disrupt and dismantle ORC and affiliated organizations; and lastly, using HSI's global reach to engage in a robust public awareness campaign to inform and educate consumers and industry on this threat, among others. It is widely recognized that 21st century polycriminal networks diversify their criminal portfolios to increase profitability and influence. No longer tied to a single criminal scheme or enterprise, it is not uncommon for organized theft groups to be involved in or affiliated with those networks who perpetrate financial fraud, identity theft, human smuggling and trafficking, illicit trade, money laundering, narcotics and weapons trafficking, among many others. One thing remains constant: organized theft groups, as do all criminal networks, must obfuscate the origin of their ill-gotten gains. The use of traditional and trade-based money laundering methods continue, yet digital assets and virtual currencies can now be used with relative ease to facilitate the immediate movement, concealment, and laundering of illicit proceeds. Recognizing the complexity of illicit finance, HSI recently collaborated with the Association of Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialists to publish a guide for law enforcement investigators and financial crime professionals to help combat ORC and OTGs. Further, HSI's Cornerstone outreach interfaces with traditional and non-traditional banking and financial institutions to continue our longstanding efforts to educate our partners on emerging financial threats through anti-money laundering training, including typologies of money laundering associated with ORC. Using existing infrastructure to support our efforts, HSI relies on our National Lead Development Center to coordinate ORC investigations across the full spectrum of law enforcement and private sector partners. This past year, NLDC received 222 referral requests from state and local law enforcement, in addition to private sector partners. This information led to a doubling of HSI investigations from last fiscal year alone. As we continue to see cyber-enabled crime, digital assets, financial fraud, identity theft, complex global trade practices, and other more technical methodologies used in organized retail crime, HSI is well positioned to attack this threat head on. Thank you again for your support of HSI and for the opportunity to appear before you today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. And the chair now recognizes Mr. Kane for your opening statement.
Thank you. Chairman Pfluger, Ranking Member Magaziner, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to testify before you on the current investigative capabilities of the U.S. Secret Service and how they may be of help addressing the trend of organized retail crime. As one of the nation's original investigative agencies, the Secret Service has been charged with safeguarding the nation's financial system since 1865. This includes conducting criminal investigations to protect the American public, financial institutions, and critical infrastructure from criminal exploitation. Over time, these investigations have evolved from traditional counterfeit in the Civil War to crimes related to electronic fund transfers that have become popular in the 1980s. Today, we have extensive authorities to safeguard financial payment systems from criminal exploitation, even as those illicit activities are increasingly transnational in nature and enabled by cyberspace and digital currencies. The Secret Service's primary area of focus with respect to combating organized retail crime are in training our state and local partners and providing shared resources in the form of technical tools. We aid our partners in our specialized abilities to track and seize illicit funds, often in the form of digital assets which are used by transnational criminal organizations to conceal and transfer their ill-gotten gains. The Secret Service has an exceptional record of success in disrupting transnational criminal organizations, and we remain committed to keeping pace with both technology and innovation and the evolving tactics of cyber criminals. Based on our efforts, we prevented over $2.6 billion in fraud in fiscal year 2022. These losses are victim-based and attributable crimes such as business email compromises, pandemic-related fraud, romance scams, and stolen personal information via dark web marketplaces. To aid the Secret Service in our continued law enforcement partnerships, last December, Congress renewed its commitment to the National Computer Forensic Institute by passing legislation that allowed for its continued operation through the end of fiscal year 2028. The legislation has strengthened our capabilities of the Secret Service and our law enforcement partners to combat cyber-enabled crime, including organized retail crime. One of the ongoing efforts are the cyber fraud task forces, which are directly funded by Congress to provide a forensic working environment to support criminal cases. These task forces are in 42 offices across the United States. Through them, we work closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office and law enforcement agencies to ensure that our partners have the most relevant information on criminal trends and tactics used by organized criminal groups. Our well-established and trusted relationships with financial institutions stemming from our origins in combating counterfeit currency affords us the agility to aid with cases involving organized retail crime. We are fully engaged with our partners as partnership is essential to accomplishing our mission. Organized retail crime is a crime of opportunity, and criminals exploit this in both the physical and cyber-enabled space. Efforts to stay ahead of transnational criminal organizations and their capabilities are paramount to helping deter future crimes. While organized retail crime is not a traditional area of focus for federal law enforcement, the capabilities of organized groups to commit these crimes is evident based on the reported annual losses of over $100 billion. The immediate investigative focus of the Secret Service is to disrupt and deter criminal activity and recover any funds stolen from Americans. Longer term, we'll work to ensure those who have criminally exploited our businesses are arrested and successfully prosecuted forthwith. Cyber-enabled crimes are often transnational and multi-jurisdictional in nature, which is why federal assistance, and many times not only warranted, is essential. Based on the current trends related to organized retail crime, I would submit the following 5 principles should help inform congressional efforts to address organized retail crime. 1 is resourcing. Resourcing is essential to law enforcement's ability to effectively detect, investigate, and arrest those committing these crimes. This must be constant and consistent, not just a reactive measure. Prioritize identifying and seizing assets to prevent illicit profit and recover victim financial losses. If criminals can enjoy their profits, there will be no crime or more crime. Continue to strengthen the ability of stakeholders to prevent, detect, and investigate crimes by investigating local law enforcement through federal programs such as the Secret Service's National Computer Forensic Institute. This builds the collaborative relationships necessary to address organized retail crime and other cyber-enabled crimes. Partnerships between law enforcement and the private sector are essential. We often say build trust before you need it, as this is vital for an effective response from law enforcement. And lastly, ensure legal authorities that control law enforcement activities keep pace with criminal trends. I'm honored to represent the dedicated men and women of the Secret Service here today. They work tirelessly on behalf of the American people and continue to maintain our standing as one of the world's preeminent law enforcement organizations. Secret Service appreciates your partnership and your guidance, and I'll welcome any questions you may have.